Okay.
Cycle for over without it.
Comes along if you really good. Like if you adore something, you're just constantly learning for free.
Okay. I'm gonna make a video and test. I don't know if I'm gonna test more Zapdos. Voice acting. People say like you should do voice. The problem is Pokemon has no fucking voices, right? If it's Yu-Gi-Oh, I could just be like, "It's time to duel." I don't think I can do this with save data agree. 5.7k. Okay. I uninstalled earlier, so now my character has no clothing. It's just a black screen. No, my character has no clothing on. Okay, this is unbelievable. Prize machines on 0, so I need to recharge that shit. Prize machine. I never seem to get prizes on this shit, man. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Info prize. I never seem to get the prize. The only thing I've got is an emblem. Emblem before. Sticker. I do not need a sticker. Except Ultra Class 2. This guy's been grinding PvP, man. Oh, a girl! A girl! Okay, maybe I'll try Zapdos. Because it's not fully downloaded, everyone's wearing black. Everyone's wearing black. Zapdos has already been selected. So, often used. Maybe I can try Darkrai. My Flowstone's at level 1 again, so I'm gonna have to change it. Weakness policy. Weakness policy. Gonna have to use Leafeon. Leafeon or Blastoise? Leafeon dies really easily though, that's the problem! But it hits decently. I had to get rid of Flowstone, and unless I upgrade my Flowstone, I'm gonna have to go with the shittier version of Weakness Policy. I mean, if there was a fucking Yu-Gi-Oh, at least I can do some voice acting. Okay, so I'm no pro PvP. I think this is like the Ultra, not Ultra League. Ultra is like, I mean, 2 below Master. It's quite. It's a bit above veteran. Go 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 go. Boosh 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 boosh. I can't. They should add voices to this, man, so you can hear people better. Damn, I just give him 3 kills over? Annoying, man. Damn it, man. Damn it, man. Can't believe we
Virtual
lost.
pop-ups. I'm obsessed with real life, and I think college campuses are incredibly important because one of the coolest things that are going on in the world. How many people here are over 45? Raise your hands. So a lot of you know this. If you have children, we are of the generation where our children are incredibly influential on us. So college marketing 40 years ago was interesting because you wanted the young consumer that was on strategy. It's double interesting now because the 19-year-old girl in her home is very impactful on her mother's buying behavior. In fact, we tried to sell V8 juice to dads. Sorry, this is making me choke, but it's very good. We had a campaign at Vayner where we were trying to sell V8 juice to 55 to 65-year-old men and market it on TikTok to teenage girls to influence that behavior. Like, this is for your dad, and it dismantled anything else we were doing. Right? We all know the 16-year-old girl, the 14-year-old girl, the 19-year-old girl is very influential. So my answer of focus is, look, it depends on what everyone's creating, but does on-campus activations have an incredible opportunity for the brands in this room? Absolutely, especially if you film those activations and use that creative in your social. Turning every analog event into a production day for content and social doubles up the value of that execution. I think this is very modern, contemporary marketing.
Thank you.
You're welcome, brother.
How's it going? I'm Jordan Seeloff. I'm with a company called Geared, and we created a technology that launches brands across Target, Walmart, eBay, Amazon, all the major retailers, and it doesn't cost you anything from a brand perspective. We do batches of 10, and we're leveraging systems that allow you guys to be able to scale it infinitely without the upfront cost. So that's why we're here. Thanks.
So that was an infomercial.
What is your question?
That wasn't a question. That was an interrupted commercial. Just curious.
Yeah, sorry. Not intentional, but yeah, go ahead.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So I have an infomercial, but first I have a question, if that's okay.
What, I'm sorry?
I said I do have a little bit of an infomercial, but first I have a question, if that's okay.
I would definitely not start with the commercial after what we just saw.
As somebody that is younger, I'm 24, in Gen Z, and I am working for bigger brands that are also in the CPG space, but they don't necessarily have as much of a ESG mindset. Like, they're not really wanting to focus as much on environmental sustainability goals as, you know, what I feel like Gen Z would be interested in, and I feel like the brand that I'm talking about, you know, they're very interested in that. So how would you recommend for us younger people to try to convince or to advocate for more sustainability actions with the people that are in charge nowadays?
It's a great question. It's also a tough answer that I'm going to give you, which is convincing is the great misstep of society, right? A 24-year-old executive in a company convincing the whole company, the board, the CEO, that they need to do X, Y, and Z is very hard. On the flip side, a 24-year-old or all of us about what we care about, what I do for, by the way, everything I talk about, kindness, marketing, all that, I'm trying to convince no one. I just show up every day with conviction. So you're not gonna convince anyone. You have two options. Save money eventually and start your own company and do what you believe in, or start making content or doing things. For example, you making a video with your phone and your friend and going on a college campus and interviewing 197 people and asking them, would they spend 50 cents more for this because of this environment aspect, and then editing that into a 21-minute video and hoping that video gets traction by putting it out in social is far more likely for you to achieve the goal you have than begging your managers, VP, SVP, EVP, C-suite to make a change. So I would say that for a lot of you, whatever you're passionate about, I'm very passionate about a lot of things, convincing is impossible in a corporation when you do not have the leverage, but conviction is how the world has changed and continues to change. And now that you have the ability and no excuses, in the 60s, 70s, 80s, you needed ABC or the Wall Street Journal or the New York Times or NPR to help you. I'm sure it's not lost on any of you. Everybody can go direct to the world today. The question is, are you gonna be action-oriented or are you gonna talk about it?
Great. Okay, we have time for one more. I want to make sure we're being
Hi, my name is Josephine Musco. 12 years ago, I found out that tea bags are leaching billions of microplastics in our cups.
Oh,
So
I'm very aware.
I invented the first truly microplastic-free tea alternative to the tea bag. It's a tea strip. It fully dissolves in your cup. There's nothing to throw away. There's no microplastics or toxins. I'm not only saving our health, but I'm also saving the environment because there's over 100 billion tea bags discarded up every year in the landfills globally. So I would like to give you some of my products and connect me later if possible.
You got it. I'll grab it as I walk off that. Oh, I'll take one. I'll take it out. Do we have time for one more?
We have time for one more question.
I'm so
Oh, sure.
I'm so sorry. I think it's okay.
Is this hard?
Do you want to just wait? We'll catch it then. Okay. Go ahead.
You're welcome.
Hey Gary.
Hi.
Nice to see you.
Great to see you.
So my name is Cynthia, and I'm the founder of Zinga Foods. We make Salvadoran frozen food, and I know that you know this, but I used to be your intern.
Well, I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
I used to be your intern.
Yes, oh, I know, yes. I see that. That's great. Oh my God, I couldn't see. It is so good to see you. How are you? You well? Great to see you. You good?
Yeah.
It's so good to see you. That's so awesome.
Yes, but I will never talk about how we met right now, but my question is, because I understand, VaynerX, when you're looking for investments, what you're looking for, I don't think you touched on that, so that's what
Yeah, it's a
I'm
good question.
interested
I think you were around me, so you know this. Like it's a very gray and black and white framework for me, right? I'm always looking for my intuition. You know how you were hired. Like I'm very intuitive. I'm willing to be wrong on my intuition. At this point in my career, this might help some of you. Let me be very vulnerable. I went through a really interesting thing the last 5 years where I realized more than half of my investing was me doing charity work, not investing. You like that? It was a realization. I realized that I would write checks often because I just wanted that person to win. It was a bleeding heart syndrome, which I'm incredibly proud of, but as you might imagine, was very ineffective. Early in my career, Facebook, Twitter, Tumblr, Uber, Snap, it was like, what's the business? Today, what I look for is still that human spirit that I'm looking for, but I'm trying to detach from the charitable work versus like, do I believe that person has the emotional intelligence and is a kind person and has the stomach for the game? And what do I believe in the business thesis? So it's always been jockey and horse. Jockey is the operator, horse is the idea and the business. And now I'm getting better at dissecting, a little bit of that human intuitive part. And so obviously, of course, I'm happy to look at yours and others. And I'm also gonna be walking around. Where is my booth for Lucky Gummies? Nick?
Yep.
No?
Well, why don't we find that?
It's downstairs in the basement. Nice.
It's downstairs in the expo hall. We're not putting anybody in the basement. Okay, well, one last piece of advice for everyone to take with them before the very short snippet, but what else do you have to share? One last thought.
A couple things. I'm so sorry that so many of you are in line. I'm Gary at VaynerMedia. If you want to send an email, I have a long flight to Miami tonight. I'm sure I can answer some. My last piece of advice is that self-awareness is the punchline if you're going to be successful. Way too many people I come across in companies and in things of that nature are in the business of wishing they were someone versus realizing who they are. As operators, as executives, as founders, as people living in society, like the quicker you can get comfortable with what you're actually good at and what you actually like, and not beat yourself up who you're not, but get really good about being like, but I'm this, and I'm this, and I'm this. And then you do that, and then if you're an owner, operator, founder, surrounding yourself with people that can do the things that you're not naturally good at. Self-awareness is an incredibly powerful trait. Often, as I think we know, you're all living life, rarely talked about, definitely not talked about from the lens of business. And I will tell you unequivocally, it has been foundational to my success and to the success of many of the companies that I'm on the board of, investor of, or have been close enough to watch navigate. And I wish you the process of self-awareness, because it's also a cousin to self-love, which I promise you all of you can use a little bit more of. And once you get there, it gets really fucking good, and you become really good, and then you can be a contributor to more good. And I wish only health more than that for you, and I appreciate being with you this morning. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Thank you. 9 p.m. to midnight might be the most important 3-hour window in a 24-hour day for those who are frustrated, resentful, struggling, not fulfilled, unhappy, curious, determined, hopeful, and ambitious. The #1 opportunity is live social shopping. Europe is the best advice for someone who's been overcoddled. Mommy's been trying to help you, and you're not doing anything about it. Here's the encouragement. The best way to start is to find something to sell and to go live and do it. It's real, man. Live shopping is going to be massive. Live shopping is going to be a monster. Live shopping is a huge opportunity in 2047. You got this, bro. You can do this. Stop crying. Every single thing that is worth it is hard. Love is hard. Relationships is hard. Being healthy and strong is hard. Making money is hard. We have to fall in love with hard. All right, that was weird. I feel like the Matrix just now tried to stop me from helping everyone. I feel like I'm giving the wheel, and they don't want it. They don't want it. 9 p.m. to 12. That's the big takeaway here. Is your time. And if someone says I'm too tired, well then that's that. Then live in it. Good to see everybody. Very excited for Tea with Gary Vee, episode 100. A nice little milestone. T made a nice video. I said we don't celebrate, but I appreciate the effort. We may still post it. Raghav, you got a question?
What is the power of no?
Power of no is something that I've struggled with. In fact, over the weekend I told AJ that Michael Rubin from Fanatics said something twice now, one in a one-on-one meeting, one in a group thing I was in last week, where he has the same problem that I have, which is even if 13 different ideas are all right, collectively they're wrong because they're just stretching a little too thin. And I talk a lot about happiness versus success financially. So for me, the power of no is very important. Most of you have a problem saying yes. I have a problem saying no. Most of you should be saying yes to more things. I'm so addicted to the concept of maybe, serendipity, karma, that I say yes to a lot of things. There's some stuff on my schedule today that I looked at over the weekend that should be no's. With this last full week before the holidays, I need to accomplish a whole lot of things. So for a lot of you that are more like me, yes men and women, the power of no is more effectiveness, more efficiency, not getting sidetracked, being able to double down on your most important things. I think a lot of people struggle with, ironically, saying yes to more things. You think you're busier than you are. You're fearful of wasting time, and I think I'm a little bit on the other side, and I need to get a little bit better at no. And I would say this year I got better at it. I'm trying to get even stronger at it, but finding the balance between yes and no. Actually, everybody who's in the chat right now, all 700 of you, let's get the shares going right now. But I have a question for all 700 of you right now. How many of you feel like you're saying yes to too many things, and how many of you feel like you're saying no to too many things? Say yes or no. Just a good old-fashioned yes or no, and thank you for everybody's reposting. I see you. Say you're saying yes to too many things or no to too many things. And it's gonna be interesting to see. Nice little mix of both. Yeah, I think all of us are trying to find that middle. You know, all of us are trying to find that middle. But I think a lot of you are scared to fail and not enough yeses. And then I think a lot of you are just a little more creative, a little more skelter like I am, and need to find the power of no. The answer to your question directly is the power of no allows you to be more effective and efficient on the things you've already
臭
said yes.
屁股努力啊！
Before you say yes to another thing, have you fulfilled or executed enough on all of your prior yeses? Everybody, my latest book on how to get better at social media is now going to be pinned to the bottom of the show. All right, let's keep it going.
How would you handle feelings, whether it's with the family or you think that you even though it's making money?
This is a really good question. This is just called being a grown-up and eating crap for the betterment of your family. I think this is a real grown adult process a lot of us have gone through. There have been many times through my life, especially my life, where I've been really the financial driver for everybody around me. It's called living life. You know, like our pain tolerance is a direct correlation sometimes to the life we live. I mean, there's so many of us right now that are providing, and you're providing emotionally, you're providing financially, and you know, what I would say is to make sure that you don't create a level of resentment. This is why I've become infatuated with people learning how to use this. I'm really happy that Crypto Daddy and Treyway 100 just bought this. I hope it helps them. I think that the fact that all of us, if this was 1984, Tea with Gary Vee, I'd say, Wayne, suck it up, you're a man. Literally. Because Wayne would have to work 9 to 6, and there'd be no really real way without Wayne taking a high risk of quitting and trying to get another job for Wayne to set himself up. The fact that we live in a world right now where you can use social media content, LinkedIn especially, to produce content or reach out to people via social to create your other job opportunity, that you don't need recruiters coming to you, you could be the recruiter for yourself, is a real gift. This whole 6 p.m., you know, this whole 6 p.m., or even if you want to eat dinner, be with a family, have a little leisure, call it this 9 p.m. to 5 in the morning economy. And obviously you need sleep, so 5 in the morning is a little bit of a hyperbole, but I would say for the people that are unhappy, like Wayne, who's providing for his family but he's unhappy, that I would say that 9 p.m. to midnight is one of the remarkable 3 hours in our society right now. I believe that 9 p.m. to midnight is one of the most important 3 hours. I could argue that 9 p.m. to midnight is one of the most important 3 hours, if not the most important 3 hours of the unhappy, unfulfilled, struggling, concerned in our society right now. Because from 9 p.m. to midnight, between LinkedIn and the other social networks, you can start creating the other opportunities for yourself to get out of the hole you're in. 9 p.m. to midnight might be the most important 3-hour window in a 24-hour day for those who are frustrated, resentful, struggling, not fulfilled, unhappy, on the flip side, curious, determined, hopeful, and ambitious. Because a lot of us have to do things 9 to 5, 9 to 6, 9 to 7, and a lot of us also worry about work-life balance, some sort of, you know, reality of providing the emotional and time for our spouse, our partner, our girlfriend, our boyfriend, our husband, our wife, our son, our daughter, our parents. So fine, I'm giving you 6 to 9. But this 9 p.m. to midnight is the 3-hour window to flip the switch. And I highly recommend people get more serious about it. Thank you for picking up the book. If you want to get better at social media, if you want to learn how to get better at social media, if you need to get better at social media content, the book is here. Look at Russ. Look at Russ in the book. Look at Russ making an appearance in the book. Day Trading Attention, pin below. The perfect gift for yourself. Also, if you're a collector, who's a Pokemon or Marvel or Disney collector? Say Pokemon, Disney, Marvel. Check out the comic books. Next question, team.
How can I tell my mom that I just sent you but she still has time to go in kindergarten for constantly happy with herself? I've heard her to post talking about that.
I mean, it's the same old game, right? Like, you have to get her to listen to my podcast. All of you should be checking out my podcast, Gary VEE podcast. Search that right now on ChatGPT or Google. Make sure you do that right now. How many of you are, actually, let's be honest right now, all 888 of you, good little number. How many of you are subscribed on Apple or Spotify to my podcast? Say yes podcast, say no podcast. I need all 900 answers right now. Say yes podcast, no podcast. Here's where I'm going with it. Whether it's the Gary Vee podcast, which I would love all of you to get on, or some other, your mom needs positivity and encouragement, accountability, and push in her ears. That's what, listen, that's all that life is. All that life is your mindset, your perspective, how you see the world. The audio that runs through your head, self-doubt, self-love, opportunity, cynicism. I'm 50, she's 50, she thinks it's over, I don't even think I've started. That's real. And I don't believe that a lot of you believe that I believe that. I don't believe that a lot of you believe me when I say that I don't feel like I've just started. I'm aware of my accomplishments, but I genuinely feel they've been foundational to what I'm doing next. How many people here are under 40 and feel like it's over? Like, they've made their bed, they have to sleep in it. They picked the job, they picked the person, they picked where they live. Like, how many of you under 40 say, that's me, and then put your age number on the right? That's me, and then put your age number. That's me, I'm 47. That's me, I'm 39. Put that's me, I need all of you to say, yeah, I mean, like, when I see Tiger Josh say, that's me and I'm 37, that's me, I'm 39, that's me, I'm 39, like, you can see a lot of 30s. You know, it's crazy to me. You know, at 34 years old, I worked in a liquor store, had never made business content, or just started making business content. Like, I don't think people get it. Like, you know, and I know all of you have seen this content from me over and over and over and over again. I don't care if you listen to me. You're not my sister. You know, like when people push back at me, like, you think I care? I care in general, but I don't know you. I don't know Saps. Like, I don't know everyone in here. Like, I don't know you like that. I'd like to know you. This is why we hang out on Tea with Gary Vee. I'm desperate. This is why I allocate my time, which is my biggest asset, to do this in the morning on December 15th. Like, I do this, but I don't know how to get you there unless you constantly listen to it over and over until it breaks through. How many people here, no bullshit, please put in the chat, have broken through mentally, have gone from cynical to positive because of therapy, who you hang out with, who you've cut out? Who's had a breakthrough? Say, I've broken through. Say, I've broken through in the chat. Because I need people to see others. You see me. Everybody, look in the chat right now. Like, people can break through. But to answer to your mom, like, I need you to listen to my podcast every day. But not me, not this selfish, like, listen to my podcast. Me, meaning someone like me. I don't care if you listen to me or any of the other thousands of people on the internet that provide positive and practical, accountable, and hopeful content. I really don't care. I really don't care. Meaning, I'd love for you to listen to me, but I really don't care if it's me or someone else. But I need you to tune out negativity. Like, I don't know what else to say. It is very clear to me what's going on. If you hang out with negative people, cynical people, non-hopeful people, non-ambitious people, like that OG shit your great-grandmother told you of, like, you are who you surround yourself with, is true. And the problem is most of you surround yourself right now with social media and mainstream media content that is scaring you. Both sides of the political aisle are doing the same thing globally. Both sides are doing the same thing. They're scaring you. Everyone's cynical. Everyone's become super over-coddled, so we're blaming. So you're scared and you're blaming. Do you know that there's actually kids that are Gen Z that actually blame boomers? Like, actually, like, there's actually random 27, 34-year-olds who are like, it's the 80-year-old's fault. That's insanity. Like, it's exhausting. So, I don't know, like, what I would tell your mama is start listening to optimistic, offense-oriented people. That's why offense-oriented orangutan is one of my favorite befriends. Offense-oriented orangutan is really deep. Who's a befriends collector here? Say befriends. It's one of the ones that are super under the radar. If people have been following befriends for a long time, they know I rarely talk about the offense-oriented orangutan, right? But it's one of my favorite characters. I call him Triple O. Triple O is a beast. Like, who's offense-oriented? Like, almost everything that comes out of my mouth is offense-oriented. That's it, man. That's what we need to be. All right, let's keep it going. Next question.
How do you find work-life balance while you have anxiety that you're not doing enough?
By giving yourself grace, by realizing there's no such thing as work-life balance. This morning I was actually thinking, I was like, you know, we're at that time, you know, like, was 25 a good year? Like, do I feel good about it? Like, how do I feel like I did? Reality is like, there's no perfect year. Like, in hindsight, sometimes, like, for example, I might in 7 years look back at 25 and be like, oh, that was a good year, right? I started doing live. That can be one, right? You know, there's a lot of ways to think about it. I'm just in the business of loving myself. Like, real talk. Like, but holding myself accountable and not being delusional. It's this really interesting balance of, like, I know I'm trying and that is enough. Like, I know I'm trying and that's enough. And I want all of you there. Like, if you're really trying and you're coming from a good place and you've got a balance of, like, trying to do right by you and your family, but also care about others. Like, even just how nice I am in public, like opening a door, saying hi, or smiling at people, makes me feel very fulfilled, makes me feel good about myself, makes me feel like I'm trying to leave a positive deposit in a world that's passionate about doing the reverse. But I don't get delusional. Like, a lot of, like, you can like yourself, you can be nice, but laying on your couch all day and, like, watching porn, and, like, you're probably not being productive. You could be, like, laying around and just gambling on Polymarket and, like, DraftKings and Fanatics betting. Like, that's probably not productive. You could be, like, laying on your couch and your mom is giving you money and you're just watching, like, Elf for the 15th time in the last 2 weeks. Like, that's probably not productive. So there's a level of, like loving yourself, but also holding yourself accountable. I don't know why so many of you struggle with the balance of loving yourself, but holding yourself accountable. Because I feel like when people hear holding yourself accountable, they hear it in their mind of, like, shit on yourself for sucking. Like, when I talk about patience, people get all shook. Like, Gary Vee, like, I see the comments, you guys see it, right? This advice isn't it. Like, you gotta go hard. Like, motherfucker, I'm going harder than you. There's no one who's left a comment that says, Gary's wrong, you have to go hard, has gone harder than me. I feel it. Not one person. But I think people are struggling with the balance. So how do I answer this person? Very easily. Like, and by the way, yesterday's over. Like, if yesterday you sucked, like, if yesterday was a bad day, if yesterday you were like, I blew this whole year, I blew my whole life, it really doesn't matter. Today's always day one. Today's day one, y'all. For example, Nomas, Michael Silcillian, DeMarcus Collection, and Act on Prompting all bought this book probably to day one next year. They're gonna read it, and they're gonna get better at social media content, and they can start winning. All right, next question.
I'm 23 and I'm struggling to figure out my career. I want to do something for myself. But my girlfriend of 4 years wants to get married and he loves me. I'm taking to work on a traditional job. I don't know what to continue about.
9 p.m. to midnight. You can do both. Like, I don't understand how people don't realize you can do both. You can work 9 to 5 and then you can work in the evening. Now, first of all, your girlfriend, since you were 18 and now you're 22, you guys are young. Like, I know that's how they did in the old days and you might be immigrant life and that's how you still do it. I get it. But like, I would just say like, outside pressure is always wrong. You can't live your life based on what your girlfriend, fiance, future wife wants you to do, even if you love her more than breathing itself. Because there will be resentment that builds from that. I'm about to drop a bomb this morning. Many of you that are people pleasers must protect yourself from resenting those that you're pleasing and then blaming them for it. I'm gonna say that again. Many of you that are people pleasers must protect yourself from resenting those that you're doing the people pleasing for, only to then blame them for it when you decided to do it. This has been a vulnerability of mine through my life's journey. You are deciding to please someone else, your mom, your dad, your husband, your wife, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, your child. You've decided to please someone else, and not from a place of insecurity. You just have a lot of warmth in your heart. Like, I don't people please because I want you to like me. I actually don't give a fuck if any of you like me. I like to people please because I'm in a good place and I like it. It fulfills me. Yeah, I get it, J-Chap, but it's really, really important. You know, like, you're absolutely right. That's what so many people can get caught on. Like, I'm telling all of you, you have to be very careful, and this is why we're talking about it. I like you too, the man. I need all of you to understand this. You can't blame others when you people please and then you resent them. You must be accountable. You must be accountable. That's it. Accountability matters. A lot of you have to check yourselves. We need more humility, more self-awareness. I really hope this helps someone this morning. I really hope this helps someone this morning. This is real stuff. A lot of you pointing fingers when it's actually thumbs. All right, I'm gonna talk to the chat for a little bit. Just talking to the chat a little bit. Everybody in the chat. Chrissy says, wow, I've never looked at it like that before. See, that's what I'm here for. See, Christy just made my whole morning. These little angles, like, all life is how you see it. All life is how you see it. That's all, like, there is no life besides how you see it. People think there's right. I laugh at this. People think there's right and wrong. People think life is black and white. How many of you struggle with wanting life to be black and white? How many of you see life black and white? How many of you think life is black and white? How many people here want others to see life black and white? How many? Say black and white in the chat if you're one of those people. I need it. I need it. I need you to own it. It's easy behind the screen. Own it. How many people here are disappointed by other people? Other people disappoint you. Jojo says, wow, Gary, you look tired of stuff. No, Jojo, it's just I'm 50 now, and I don't use face cream, and I'm not doing the facelift thing. I'm not doing it. I'm not doing the plastic surgery. Look, you'll never believe it. I can make myself look better, but that's just not where I'm about. How many of you are disappointed by others? I'm telling you, be careful. Too many expectations, too much insecurity. If you're constantly disappointed by people,
oh wow, this one has all the major trainers. Cynthia, Karina, Raihan, Green, and Leon. I don't know, Green always has the Blastoise when her name is Green. Shouldn't you have Venusaur?
code's not even the right verb anymore, right? But I have to express my will to my agents for 16 hours a day. Manifest.
How can I have not just a single session of plot code or codex or some of these agent harnesses? How can I have more of them? How can I do that appropriately? The agent part is now taken for granted. Now the claw-like entities are taken for granted. And now you can have multiple of them. And now you can have instructions to them. And now you can have optimization over the instructions. But I mean, this is why I guess the psychosis is that this is like infinite and everything is skill issue.
Hi listeners, welcome back to No Priors. Today I'm here with Andre Karpathy, and we have a wide-ranging conversation for you about code agents, the future of engineering and AI research, how more people can contribute to research, what's happening in robotics, his prediction for how agents can reach out into the real world, and education in this next stage. Welcome, Andre. Andre, thanks for doing this.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
So it's been a very exciting couple of months in AI.
Yeah, you could say that.
I remember walking into the office at some point and you were like really locked in. And I was asking what you were up to and you're like, I have to code for 16 hours a day, or code's not even the right verb anymore, right? But I have to express my will to my agents for 16 hours a day. Manifest. Because like there's been a jump in capability. Yeah. What's happening? Tell me about your experience.
Yeah, I kind of feel like I was in this perpetual, I still am often in this state of AI psychosis, just like all the time, because there was a huge unlock in what you can achieve as a person, as an individual, right? Because you were bottlenecked by, your typing speed and so on. But now with these agents, it really, I would say in December is when it really just, something flipped, where I kind of went from 80-20 of like, to like 20-80 of writing code by myself versus just delegating to agents. And I don't even think it's 20-80 by now. I think it's a lot more than that. I don't think I've typed like a line of code probably since December, basically, which is like an extremely large change. I was talking to it, like, for example, I was talking about it to, for example, my parents and so on, and I don't think like a normal person actually realizes that this happened or how dramatic it was. Like literally, like if you just find a random software engineer or something like that at their desk and what they're doing, like their default workflow of building software is completely different as of basically December. So I'm just like in this state of psychosis of trying to figure out like what's possible, trying to push it to the limit. How can I have not just a single session of plot code or codex or some of these agent harnesses? How can I have more of them? How can I do that appropriately? And then how can I use these claws? What are these claws? So there's like a lot of new things. I want to be at the forefront of it, and I'm very antsy that I'm not at the forefront of it. And I see lots of people on Twitter doing all kinds of things and they all sound like really good ideas, and I need to be at the forefront or I feel extremely nervous. And so I guess I'm just in this psychosis of like what's possible, like because it's unexplored fundamentally.
Well, if you're nervous, the rest of us are nervous. we have a team that we work with at Conviction that their setup is everybody is like, none of the engineers write code by hand, and they're all microphoned and they just like whisper to their agents all the time. It's the strangest work setting ever. And I thought they were crazy, and now I fully accept. I was like, oh, this was the way. Like you're just ahead of it.
Yes.
How do you think about your own capacity now to like explore or to do projects? Like, what is it limited by?
Yeah, what is it limited by? I think everything, like so many things, even if they don't work, I think to a large extent you feel like it's a skill issue. It's not that the capability is not there. It's that you just haven't found a way to string it together of what's available. Like I didn't give good enough instructions in the agents.md file or whatever it may be. I don't have a nice enough memory tool that I put in there or something like that. So it all kind of feels like skill issue when it doesn't work to some extent. You want to see how you can parallelize them, etc. And you want to be Peter Steinberg, basically. So Peter is famous. He has a funny photo where he's in front of a monitor with lots of uses codex. So lots of codex agents telling the monitor, and they all take about 20 minutes if you prompt them correctly and use the high effort. And so they all take about 20 minutes to have multiple, 10 repos checked out. And so he's just going between them and giving them work. It's just like you can move in much larger macro actions. It's not just like here's a line of code, here's a new function. It's like here's a new functionality and delegate it to agent 1. Here's a new functionality that's not going to interfere with the other one. Give it agent 2, and then try to review their work as best as you can, depending on how much you care about that code. Like, what are these macro actions that I can like manipulate my software repository by? And like another agent is doing some like research, another agent is writing code, another one is coming up with a plan for some new implementation. And so everything just like happens in these like macro actions over your repository. And you're just trying to become like really good at it and develop like a muscle memory for it is extremely it's very rewarding, number one, because it actually works. But it's also kind of like the new thing to learn. So that's why, hence the psychosis.
Yeah, I do feel like my instinct is like, whenever I'm waiting for an agent to complete something, the obvious thing to do is like, well, I can do more work, right? Like if I have access to more tokens, then like I should just parallelize adding tasks. And so that's very stressful, because if you don't feel very bounded by your ability to spend on tokens, then you are the bottleneck in the system that is max capability.
Yeah, if you're not maximizing your subscription, at least. And it's ideally for multiple agents. Like if you run out of the code on Codex, you should switch to Claude or whatnot. I don't know. Like that's what I've been trying to do a little bit. And I feel nervous when I have subscription left over. That just means I haven't maximized my token throughput. So I actually kind of experienced this when I was a PhD student. You would feel nervous when your GPUs are not running. Like you have GPU capability and you're not maximizing the available flops to you. But now it's not about flops, it's about tokens. So what is your token throughput, and what token throughput do you command?
I would actually argue that it's very interesting that we had, at least 10 years where in many engineering tasks, people just they didn't feel compute bound, right? And the entire industry feels that now. They feel like they felt resource bound, and now that you have this big capability jump, you're like, oh, actually, it's not my ability to access the compute anymore. Like, I'm the binding constraint.
Yeah, it's a skill issue.
Yeah,
which is very empowering because because you can be getting better. So that's why I think it's very addictive because there's unlocks when you get better.
Where do you think it goes? Like if you just think about like, okay, Andre's iterating and everybody else is for 16 hours a day, getting better at using coding agents. Like, what does it look like in a year? Of like you've reached mastery.
Yeah, what does mastery look like, right? At the end of the year, or like 2, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, etc. Well, I think everyone is basically interested in like going up the stack. So I would say, it's not about a single session with your agent. Multiple agents, how do they collaborate, and teams, and so on. So everyone's trying to figure out what that looks like. And then I would say Claw is also kind of an interesting direction because it really, when I say a Claw, I mean this like layer that kind of takes persistence to a whole new level. Like it's something that like keeps looping. It's like it's not something that you are interactively in the middle of. It kind of like has its own little sandbox, its own little, it kind of like does stuff on your behalf, even if you're not looking, kind of thing. And then also has like maybe more sophisticated memory systems, etc. that are not yet implemented in agents. So OpenClaw has a lot more sophisticated memory, I would say, than what you would get by default, which is just a memory compaction when your context runs out, right?
Do you think that's the piece that resonated for more users versus like perhaps like broader tool access?
For OpenClaw?
Yeah.
There's like, I think there's at least 5 things.
There's a lot of really good ideas in here. Yeah, good job, Peter.
I mean, Peter has done a really amazing job. I saw him recently. And I talked to him about it, and he's very humble about it, but I think he innovated simultaneously in like 5 different ways and put it all together. So for example, like the Soul MD document, like he actually really crafted a personality that is kind of compelling and interesting. And I feel like a lot of the current agents, they don't get this correctly. I actually think Claude has a pretty good personality. It feels like a teammate, and it's excited with you, etc. I would say, for example, Codex is a lot more dry. Which is kind of interesting because in ChatGPT, Codex is like a lot more upbeat and highly sycophantic. But I would say Codex, the coding agent, is very dry. It doesn't seem to care about what you're creating. It's kind of like, oh, I implemented it. It's like, okay, but do you understand what we're building?
It's true.
It doesn't. And the other thing I would say is, for example, with Claude, I think they dialed the psychopathy fairly well. Where when Claude gives me praise, I do feel like I slightly deserve it, because sometimes I kind of give it like not very well formed thoughts, and I give it an idea that I don't think is fully baked, and it doesn't actually react very strongly. It's like, oh yeah, we can implement that. But when it's a really good idea, by my own account, it does seem to reward it a bit more. And so I kind of feel like I'm trying to like earn its praise, which is really weird. And so I do think the personality matters a lot, and I think a lot of the other tools maybe don't appreciate it as much. And I think in this aspect also Peter really cares about this, and so that's correct. And then the memory system, and then just he's just having fun with this. And then the single WhatsApp portal to all of the automation.
Yeah. Is there something that you have done personally with your claws beyond software engineering that you think is fun or interesting?
Yeah, so in January I had a claw. I went through a period of claw psychosis. So I built, I have a claw basically that takes care of my home. And I call him Dobby the Elf Claw. Basically, I used the agents to find all of the smart home subsystems of my home on the local area network, which I was kind of surprised they worked out of the box. Like I just told it that I think I have Sonos at home. Like, can you try to find it? And it goes and I did like IP scan of all the computers on the local area network, and it found the Sonos thing, the Sonos system, and it turned out that there's no password protection or anything like that. It just logged in and it's like, oh yeah, you have these Sonos systems installed. Let me try to reverse engineer how it's working. It does some web searches and it finds like, okay, these are the API endpoints, and then it's like, do you want to try it? And I'm like, whoa, like you just did that. And I'm like, yeah, can you try to play something in the study? And it does, and music comes out. And I'm like, I can't believe I just...
That's crazy, that's like 3 prompts. Yeah.
I can't believe I just typed in, like, can you find my Sonos? And that song is playing music. And it did the same for lights. And so basically, like, it kind of hacked in, figured out the whole thing, created APIs, created a dashboard, so I could see the command kind of center of, like, all of my lights in the home. And then it was, like, switching lights on and off. And, so I can ask it, like, Dobby at sleepy time. And when it's sleepy time, that just means all the lights go off, etc. And so it controls all of my lights, my HVAC, my shades, the pool, and the spa, and also my security system. So I have a camera pointed outside of the house, and anytime someone rolls in, I have a Qwen model that looks at the videos. So first of all, there's change detection,
right.
And then based on change detection, it goes to Qwen, and then it actually like tells me, it sends me a text to my WhatsApp. It shows an image from the outside, and it says, hey, a FedEx truck just pulled up, and you might want to check it, and you got new mail or something like that. And Dobby just texts me this. It's really incredible. So Dobby is in charge of the house. I text with it through WhatsApp. And it's been like really fun to have these macro actions that maintain my house. I haven't like really pushed it like way more beyond that, and I think people are doing a lot more crazy things with it. But for me, even just the home automation setup, I used to use like 6 apps, completely different apps, and I don't have to use these apps anymore. Like Dobby controls everything in natural language. It's amazing. And so I think like I haven't even pushed the paradigm fully, but already that is so helpful and so inspiring, I would say.
Do you think that's indicative of like what people want from a user experience perspective with software, right? Because I don't think, it's pretty ignored that it takes humans effort to like learn new software, like new UI.
Yeah, I think to some extent, that's right. It's like working backwards from how people think an AI should be, because what people have in their mind of like what an AI is not actually what an LLM is by like in a raw sense. Like LLM is a token generator, like more tokens come out. But what they think of is like this persona identity that they can tell stuff and it remembers it, you know, and it's just kind of an entity behind a WhatsApp. It's like a lot more understandable. So I think to some extent it's like matching the expectations that humans already have for what an AI should behave. But under the hood, it's like a lot of technical details go into that. And LLMs are too raw of a primitive to actually type check as AI, I think, for most people, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that's like how we understand what the AI is, and like the description of it as Dobby or some personality obviously resonates with people. I also think that the unification that you did across your 6 different software systems for your home automation speaks to a different question of like, do people really want all the software that we have today?
Yeah.
Right? Because I would argue like, well, the hardware, but you've now thrown away the software or the UX layer of it. Do you think that's what people want?
Yeah, I think there's this sense that these apps that are on the App Store for using these smart home devices, etc., these shouldn't even exist kind of in a certain sense. Like, shouldn't it just be APIs and shouldn't agents be just using it directly? And wouldn't it, like, I can do all kinds of home automation stuff that any individual app will not be able to do, right? And an LLM can actually drive the tools and call all the right tools and do very complicated things. And so, in a certain sense, it does point to this, like maybe there's like an overproduction of lots of custom bespoke apps that shouldn't exist because agents kind of like crumble them up, and everything should be a lot more just like exposed API endpoints, and agents are the glue of the intelligence that actually like tool calls all the parts. Another example is like my treadmill. There's an app for my treadmill, and I wanted to like keep track of how often I do my cardio, but like I don't want to like log into web UI and go through a flow and etc. Like all this should just be like make APIs available, and this is kind of, you know, going towards the agentic sort of web or like agent first tools and all this kind of stuff. So I think the industry just has to reconfigure in so many ways that's like the customer is not the human anymore. It's like agents who are acting on behalf of humans, and this refactoring will probably be substantial in a certain sense. One way that people sometimes push back on this is like, do we expect people to vibe code some of these tools? Do we expect normal people to do this kind of stuff that I described? But I think to some extent this is just, you know, technology as it exists today, and right now there is some vibe coding, and I'm actually watching it and I'm working with the system. But I kind of feel like this kind of stuff that I just talked about, this should be free, like in a year or 2 or 3. There's no vibe coding involved. This is trivial. This is table stakes. This is like any AI, even the open source models, etc., can like do this. Like,
you should be able to translate from a less technical human's intent very easily to this
extremely
outcome.
easily. Yeah. Today, the vibe coding is involved, and not many people are going to do it. But
And you still have to make some design decisions, right? We were talking about like we take frames, for example.
Yeah. But I kind of feel like this will just the barrier will just come down, and it's just ephemeral software on your behalf, and some kind of like claw is handling all the details for you, but you're not involved. Claw has a machine, and it will figure it out, and it's just presenting the UIs, and you're like saying stuff, you know.
Why haven't you, I guess, like push the boundaries of what you can do personally with Claws? Like, is it, you know, you're focusing on more important projects, auto research, etc., or you're climbing the hill to mastery, or something else, right?
Yeah, I just feel like I'm so distracted by everything, so I spend like a week on the Claw stuff, and I have more to-dos almost. But I will say that
It's like Jensen tools, we're all just busier, unfortunately.
Yeah. I didn't really take advantage of a lot of like email and calendar and all this other stuff, and I didn't give it access because I'm still a little bit like suspicious and still very new and rough around the edges. So I didn't want to give it like full access to my digital life yet. And part of it is just the security, privacy, and just being very cautious in that realm. And so some of it is like held back by that, I would say. Yeah, maybe that's like the dominant feature, but some of it is also just I feel so distracted because I feel like I had a week of Claw and then other stuff is happening. And
What was the I mean, you've talked about like being able to train or at least optimize a model as a task you want to see agents do for a long time. Like, what was the motivation behind auto research?
Auto research, yeah. So I think like I had a tweet earlier where I kind of like said something along the lines of, to get the most out of the tools that have become available now, you have to remove yourself as the bottleneck. You can't be there to prompt the next thing. You need to take yourself outside. You have to arrange things such that they're completely autonomous. And more, you know, how can we maximize your token throughput and not be in the loop? This is the goal. And so I kind of mentioned that the name of the game now is to increase your leverage. I put in just very few tokens just once in a while, and a huge amount of stuff happens on my behalf. And so auto research, like I tweeted that, and I think people liked it and whatnot, but they haven't like maybe worked through like the implications of that. And for me, auto research is an example of like an implication of that. Whereas like I don't want to be like the researcher in the loop, like looking at results, etc. Like I'm holding the system back. So the question is, how do I refactor all the abstractions so that I have to arrange it once and hit go? The name of the game is how can you get more agents running for longer periods of time without your involvement, doing stuff on your behalf. And auto research is just, yeah, here's an objective, here's a metric, here's your boundaries of what you can and cannot do, and go. And yeah,
You were surprised at its effectiveness.
yeah, I didn't expect it to work because so I have the project data chat, and fundamentally, like I think a lot of people are very confused with my session for like training GPT-2 models and so on. But for me, training GPT models and so on is just a little harness, a little playground for training LLMs. And fundamentally, what I'm more interested in is like this idea of recursive self-improvement and to what extent you can actually have LLMs improving LLMs. Because I think all the frontier labs, this is like the thing. for obvious reasons, and they're all trying to recursively self-improve, roughly speaking. And so for me, this is kind of like a little playpen of that. And I guess I like tuned NamChat already quite a bit by hand in a good old-fashioned way that I'm used to. Like I'm a researcher, I've done this for like 2 decades. I have some amount of like, what is the opposite
Instinct
of hubris?
Yeah. Earned confidence.
Okay,
Yeah.
I have like 2 decades of like, oh, I've trained this model like thousands of times. I've like, so I've done a bunch of experiments. I've done hyperparameter tuning. I've done all the things I'm very used to, and I've done for 2 decades.
Yeah.
And I've gotten to a certain point, and I thought it was like fairly well tuned. And then I let auto research go for like overnight, and it came back with like tunings that I didn't see. And yeah, I did forget like the weight decay on the value embeddings, and my atom betas were not sufficiently tuned, and these things jointly interact. So like once you tune one thing, the other things have to potentially change too. I shouldn't be a bottleneck. I shouldn't be running these hyperparameter search optimizations. I shouldn't be looking at the results. There's objective criteria in this case. So you just have to arrange it so that it can just go forever. So that's a single sort of version of auto research, or like a single loop trying to improve. And I was surprised that it found these things that the repo is already fairly well tuned and still found something. And that's just a single loop. Like these frontier labs, they have GPU clusters of tens of thousands of them. And so it's very easy to imagine how you would basically get a lot of this automation on smaller models. And fundamentally everything around like frontier level intelligence is about extrapolation and scaling laws. And so you basically do a ton of the exploration on the smaller models, and then you try to extrapolate out.
So you're saying our research efforts are going to get more efficient? Like we're going to have better direction for when we scale as well, if we can do this experimentation better.
Yeah, I would say that like the most interesting project, and probably what the frontier labs are working on, is you experiment on the smaller models, you try to make it as autonomous as possible, remove researchers from the loop. They have way too much, what is the opposite?
Earned
Way too much
confidence?
confidence? Yeah, they don't know. They shouldn't be touching any of this really. And so you have to like rewrite the whole thing, because right now, I mean, certainly they can contribute ideas, but okay, they shouldn't actually be enacting these ideas. There's a queue of ideas, and there's maybe an automated scientist that comes up with ideas based on all the archive papers and GitHub repos, and it funnels ideas in, or researchers can contribute ideas. But it's a single queue, and there's workers that pull items, and they try them out, and whatever works just gets sort of put on the feature branch, and maybe some people like monitor the feature branch and merge to the main branch sometimes. So yeah, just removing humans from all the processes and automating as much as possible and getting high tokens per second throughputs. And it does require rethinking of all the abstractions, and everything has to be reshuffled. So yeah, I think it's very exciting.
Take one more recursive step here. When is the model going to write a better program MD than you?
Yeah. So program MD is
We're
like,
not in the loop.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So program MD is my crappy attempt at describing like how the auto researcher should work. Like, oh, do this, then do that, and then try these kinds of ideas, and then here maybe some ideas like look at architecture, look at optimizer, etc. But I just came up with this in Markdown, right? And so yeah, exactly. You want some kind of an auto research loop maybe that looks for. You can imagine that different program.mds would give you different progress. So basically every research organization is described by program MD.
Yeah.
A research organization is a set of markdown files that describe all the roles and how the whole thing connects. And you can imagine having a better research organization. So maybe they do fewer stand-ups in the morning because they're useless. And this is all just code, right? And so so one organization can have fewer stand-ups, one organization can have more, one organization can be very risk-taking, one organization can be less. And so you can definitely imagine that you have multiple research orgs, and then they all have code. And once you have code, then you can imagine tuning the code. So 100% there's like the meta layer of it.
Did you see my text about my contest idea? My contest idea was like let people write different program MDs, right? And so for same hardware, where do you get most improvement?
Oh, I see.
And then you can take all that data and then give it to the model and say write a better program MD.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
We're gonna get something better. Like there's no way we don't.
You
right?
can 100% look at where the improvements came from, and like, can I change program MD such that more of these kinds of things would be done, or like things that didn't work.
Just meta optimization.
Yeah, you can 100% imagine doing that. So I think this is a great idea. But it's like, I think like you sort of go one step at a time, where you sort of have one process, and then second process, and then the next process, and these are all layers of an onion. Like the LLM sort of part is now taken for granted, the agent part is now taken for granted, now the claw-like entities are taken for granted, and now you can have multiple of them, and now you can have instructions to them, and now you can have optimization over the instructions, and it's just like it's a little too much, But I mean, this is why I guess this is psychosis, is that this is like infinite, and everything is skill issue, and that's why I feel like, yeah, that's just coming back to this is why it's so insane.
Okay, well, if we're just trying to like diagnose the current moment and what is a relevant skill right now, what do you think is the implication that this is the loop we should be trying to achieve in different areas, and that it works, right? Like create the metric, or create the ability for agents to continue working on it without you.
Yeah.
Do we still have performance engineering? Like what?
Yeah. I mean, so there's a few caveats that I would put on top of the LM psychosis. Number one, this is extremely well suited to anything that has objective metrics that are easy to evaluate. So for example, like writing kernels for more efficient CUDA, code for various parts of the model, etc. The perfect fit. Because you have inefficient code, and then you want efficient code that has the exact same behavior, but it's much faster. Perfect fit. So a lot of things like are perfect fit for auto research, but many things will not be. And so it's just if you can't evaluate it, then you can't auto research it, right? So that's like caveat number one. And then maybe caveat number two, I would say is, we're kind of talking about the next steps and we kind of see what the next steps are, but fundamentally the whole thing still doesn't, it's still kind of like bursting at the seams a little bit and there's cracks and it doesn't fully work. And if you kind of try to go too far ahead, the whole thing is actually net not useful, if that makes sense. Because these models like still are not, they've improved a lot, but they're still like rough around the edges is maybe the way I would describe it. I simultaneously feel like I'm talking to an extremely brilliant PhD student who's been like a systems programmer for their entire life and a 10-year-old. And it's so weird because humans, like, there's like, I feel like they're a lot more coupled. Like you have, everything
Yes,
is
you
a lot more
wouldn't
coupled.
encounter that combination.
This jaggedness is really strange, and humans have a lot less of that kind of jaggedness, although they definitely have some. But humans have a lot more jaggedness. The agents have a lot more jaggedness, where sometimes, like, I ask for functionality and it like comes back with something that's just like totally wrong, and then we get into loops that are totally wrong, and then I get so frustrated with the agents all the time still, because you feel the power of it, but you also, there's still like, it does nonsensical things once in a while for me still as well.
I get very annoyed when I feel like the agent wasted a lot of compute on something it should have recognized was an obvious problem.
Yeah. I think like some of the bigger things is like maybe what's underneath it, if I could hypothesize, is fundamentally these models are trained via reinforcement learning. So they're actually struggling with the exact same thing we just talked about, which is the labs can improve the models in anything that is verifiable, but that has rewards. So did you write the program correctly, and does it do the unit test check out, yes or no? But some of the things where they're struggling is like, for example, I think they have a tough time with like nuance of maybe what I had in mind or what I intended, and when to ask clarifying questions. Or like, it's just anything that feels softer is like worse. And so you're kind of like, you're either on Rails and you're part of the superintelligence circuits, or you're not on Rails and you're outside of the verifiable domains, and suddenly everything kind of just like meanders. Like maybe another way to put it is if you go to like state-of-the-art model, ChatGPT, and you ask it, tell me a joke, do you know what joke you're gonna get? There's the joke.
The joke? I do feel, I can't tell you like the standard form of it, but I do feel like ChatGPT has like 3 jokes.
Yeah. So the joke that apparently all the LMs like love the most is, why do scientists not trust atoms?
Okay.
Because they make everything up.
Okay.
They make everything up. Okay. So this is still.
What did that emerge?
So this is the joke you would get like 3 or 4 years ago, and this is the joke you still get today.
Okay.
So even though the models have improved tremendously, and if you give them an agentic task, they will just go for hours and move mountains for you. And then you ask for like a joke, and it has a stupid joke, it's a crappy joke from 5 years ago, and it's because it's outside of the RL, it's outside of the reinforcement learning, it's outside of what's being improved. It's like, and it's part of the jaggedness of like, shouldn't you expect models as they get better to also have like better jokes or more diversity of them, or it's not being optimized and it's stuck.
Do you think that implies that we are not seeing like generalization in the sense of like broader intelligence of joke smartness being attached to code smartness?
Yeah, I think there's some decoupling where some things are verifiable and some things are not, and some things are optimized for arbitrarily by the labs depending on like what data went in, and some things are not. But
I mean the premise, there's a premise from some research groups that if you are smarter at code generation or in these verifiable fields, you should be better at everything.
Yeah.
And like the joke situation suggests that that's not happening at all.
I don't think that's happening.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think that's happening. I think maybe we're seeing like a little bit of that, but not like a satisfying amount.
Yeah,
Like,
that jaggedness exists in humans. You can be very, very good at that and still tell a really bad joke.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, but it still means that we're not getting, like, the story is that we're getting a lot of the intelligence and capabilities in all the domains of society like for free as we get better and better models. And it's not like exactly fundamentally what's going on. And there's some blind spots and things that are not being optimized for, and this is all clustered up in these neural net opaque models, right? So you're either on rails of what it was trained for, and everything is like you're going at speed of light, or you're not. And so it's the jaggedness. So that's why I think, like, even though the progression is obvious what should happen, you can't let it fully go there yet because it doesn't fully work, or it's a skill issue and we just haven't like figured out how to use it. So it's hard to tell.
Can I ask kind of a blasphemous question, which is like, if this jaggedness is persisting and it's all rolled up in a at least monolithic interface, right? But single model. Does that make sense, or should it be unbundled into things that can be optimized and improved against different domains of intelligence?
Like unbundling the models into multiple experts in different areas, etc.
More directly, instead of just MOE that we have no exposure to, because that can be like confusing as a user from the outside, which is like, why is it so good at this but not at this other thing?
Yeah, I think currently my impression is the labs are trying to have a single sort of like monoculture of a model that is arbitrarily intelligent in all these different domains, and they just stuff it into the parameters. I do think that I do think we should expect more speciation in the intelligences. Like, the animal kingdom is extremely diverse in the brains that exist, and there's lots of different niches of nature, and some animals have overdeveloped visual cortex or other kind of parts, and I think we should be able to see more speciation, and you don't need like this oracle that knows everything. You kind of speciate it and then you put it on a specific task, and we should be seeing some of that, because you should be able to have like much smaller models that still have the cognitive core, like they're still competent, but then they specialize, and then and then they can become more efficient in terms of latency or throughput on specific tasks that you really care about. Like if you're a mathematician working in Lean, I saw, for example, there's a few releases that really like target that as a domain. So there's probably going to be a few examples like that where the unbundling kind of makes sense.
One question I have is whether or not the capacity constraint on available compute infrastructure drives more of this, because efficiency actually matters more, right? Like if you, financing aside, no financing is involved in all of this, if you have access to full compute for anything you do, like even one single model, right? But if you actually feel pressure where like I can't serve a model of massive size for every use case, like do you think that leads to any speciation? Does that question make sense to you?
The question makes sense, and I guess like what I'm struggling with is I don't think we've seen too much speciation just yet, right?
No.
We're seeing a monoculture of models.
Yeah.
So
and there's like clearly pressure for like make a good code model, put it back in the main merge again. Yeah.
Even though there already is pressure on the models.
I guess perhaps I feel like there's a lot of very short-term supply crunch, and like maybe that causes more speciation now.
Yeah, I think fundamentally like the labs are serving a model and they don't really know what the end user is going to be asking about. So maybe that's like some part of it, because they kind of have to multitask over all the possible things they could be asked. But I think if you're coming to a business and maybe partnering on some specific problems you care about, then maybe you would see that there. Or there would be some very high value applications that are like more niche. But I think right now they're kind of like going after the totality of what's available. I don't think that the science of manipulating the brains is like fully developed yet, partly.
What do you mean manipulating?
So like so fine-tuning without losing capabilities as an example. And we don't have these primitives for actually like working with the intelligences in ways other than just context windows. Like context windows kind of just work, and it's very cheap to manipulate, etc. And this is how we're getting some of the customization, etc. But I think if it was, I think it's a bit more of a developing science of how you like more deeply adjust the models, how you have continual learning maybe, or how you fine-tune in a certain area, how you get better in a certain area, or like how you actually touch the weights, not just the context windows. And so it's a lot more tricky, I would say, to touch the weights than just the context windows, because you're actually fundamentally changing the full model and potentially its intelligence. And so so maybe it's just like not fully developed science, if that makes sense, of speciation.
And it also has to be like cheap enough for that speciation to be worthwhile in these given contexts. Can I ask a question about an extension to auto research that you described in terms of open ground? You said, okay, well, we have this thing. We need more collaboration surface around it, essentially, for people to contribute to research overall. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so we talked about our research has a single thread of like, I'm going to try stuff in loop. But fundamentally, the parallelization of this is like the interesting component. And I guess I was trying to like play around with a few ideas, but I don't have anything that like clicks as simply as like, I don't have something that I'm not super happy with just yet, but it's something I'm like working on the side when I'm not working on my claw. So I think like one issue is if you have a bunch of nodes of parallelization available to you, then it's very easy to just have multiple auto researchers talking through a common system or something like that. What I was more interested in is how you can have an untrusted pool of workers out there on the internet. So for example, in auto research, you're just trying to find the piece of code that trains a model to a very low validation loss. If anyone gives you a candidate commit, it's very easy to verify that that commit is correct, is good. Like someone could claim from the internet that this piece of code will optimize much better and give you much better performance. You could just check. It's very easy. But probably a lot of work goes into that checking. But fundamentally, they can lie and etc. So you're basically dealing with a similar kind of. It's almost actually like looks a little bit like my designs that incorporate an untrusted pool of workers. Actually look a little more like a blockchain a little bit, because instead of blocks, you have commits, and these commits can build on each other, and they contain like changes to the code as you're improving it. And the proof of work is basically doing tons of experimentation to find the commits that work. And that's hard. And then the reward is just being on the leaderboard right now. There's no monetary reward whatsoever. But I don't want to push the analogy too far, but it fundamentally has this issue where a huge amount of search goes into it, but it's very cheap to verify that a candidate solution is indeed good, because you can just train a single, someone had to try 10,000 ideas, but you just have to check that the thing that they produced actually works, because the 99,000 of them didn't work, And so basically, long story short, is like you have to come up with a system where an untrusted pool of workers can collaborate with a trusted pool of workers that do the verification. And the whole thing is kind of like asynchronous and works and so on. And it's like safe from a security perspective, because if anyone sends you arbitrary code and you're going to run it, that's very sketchy and dodgy. So but fundamentally, it should be totally possible. So you're familiar with projects like SETI at home and folding at home. All of these problems have a similar kind of setup. So folding at home, you're folding a protein, and it's very hard to find a configuration that is low energy. But if someone finds a configuration that they evaluate to be low energy, that's perfect. You can just use it. You can easily verify it. So a lot of things have this property that, very expensive to come up with, but very cheap to verify. And so in all those cases, things like folding at home or SETI at home or auto research at home will be good fits. And so long story short, a swarm of agents on the internet could collaborate to improve LLMs and could potentially even like run circles around Frontier Labs, like who knows, like maybe that's even possible. Like Frontier Labs have a huge amount of trusted compute, but the Earth is much bigger and has a huge amount of untrusted compute. But if you put systems in place that deal with this, then maybe it is possible that the swarm out there could come up with better with better solutions, and people kind of like contribute cycles to a thing that they care about. And so, sorry, so the last thought is, lots of companies or whatnot, they could maybe have like their own things that they care about. And you, if you have compute capacity, you could contribute to different kind of auto research tracks. Like maybe you care about certain, like you care about like cancer or something like that, a certain type. You don't have to just donate money to an institution. You actually could like purchase compute, and then you could join the auto research swarm for that project. So if everything is rebundled into auto researchers, then compute becomes the thing that you're contributing to the pool.
Yeah, that's very inspiring, and it's also interesting. Like I don't know how far this goes, but it is interesting that at least some audience of people, here in Silicon Valley or lining up at retail stores in China have discovered that like having access to personal compute is interesting again.
Yeah.
Right. So maybe they're really motivated to do that for their claws, and then they can contribute to auto research.
It's almost like dollars the thing everyone cares about, but is flop the thing that actually everyone cares about in the future? Like, is there going to be like a flipping almost of like what's the thing that you care about? Like right now, for example, it's really hard to get compute even if you have money.
Yeah.
So actually, it almost seems like the flop is like dominant in a certain sense. So maybe that's kind of like that. Like how many flops do you control instead of like what wealth do you control? I don't actually think that's true, but it's kind of interesting to think about.
The last thing you released was like a little bit of jobs data analysis.
Yeah.
Is that right? What and might touch a nerve, even though you're just like visualizing some public data.
Yeah.
What was what were you curious about?
Yeah, I guess I was curious too. Everyone is really thinking about the impacts of AI on the job market and what it's going to look like. So I was just interested to take a look, like what does the job market look like? Where are the different roles? And how many people are in different professions? And I was like really just interested to like look through the individual cases and try to think myself about like, with these AIs and how they're likely to evolve, like, are these going to be tools that people are using? Are these going to be displacing tools for these professions? And like, what are the current professions and how are they going to change? Are they going to grow or adjust to a large extent? Or like, what could be new professions? So it's really just like a way to fuel my own chain of thought about the industry, I suppose. And so, the jobs data basically is just the Bureau of Labor Statistics. They actually have percent outlook for each profession about how much it's expected to grow over the next, I think, almost a decade. I think it's a decade, but it was made in 2024.
We need a lot of healthcare workers.
Yeah. So they've already made those projections, and I'm not sure actually 100% what the methodology was that they put into the projections. I guess I was interested to color things by, like, if people think that what's like primarily being developed now is this kind of like more digital AI, but there's kind of like almost like these ghosts or spirit entities that can like interact in the digital world and manipulate a lot of like digital information. And they currently don't really have a physical embodiment or presence. And the physical stuff is probably going to go slightly slower because you're manipulating atoms. So flipping bits and the ability to copy paste digital information is like makes everything a million times faster than accelerating matter. So energetically, I just think we're going to see a huge amount of activity in the digital space, huge amount of rewriting, huge amount of activity, boiling soup. And I think we're going to see something that in the digital space goes at the speed of light compared to, I think, what's going to happen in the physical world to some extent. It would be the extrapolation. And so I think like there's currently kind of like, I think, an overhang where there can be like a lot of unhobbling almost potentially of like a lot of digital information processing that used to be done by computers and people. And now with AIs as like a third kind of manipulator of digital information, there's going to be a lot of refactoring in those disciplines. But the physical world is actually going to be like, I think, behind that by some amount of time. And so I think what's really fascinating to me is like, so that's why I was highlighting the professions that fundamentally manipulate digital information. This is work you can do from your home, etc. Because I feel like those will be like things will change, and it doesn't mean that there's going to be less of those jobs or more of those jobs because that has to do with like demand elasticity and many other factors. But things will change in these professions because of these new tools and because of this upgrade to the nervous system of the human superorganism, if you want to think about it that way.
Given the look you had at the data, do you have either any observations or guidance for people facing the job market or thinking about what to study now or what skills to develop? I mean, we can all go get, like, I'm very thankful that I have to like meet people for my job right now. Yeah. More physical. Yeah.
Could you do your work from home though? I could.
I think there are relationship parts of it that are hard, but most of it I could.
Yeah. I think it's really hard to tell because again, like the job market is extremely diverse. And I think the answers will probably vary, but to a large extent, like these tools are extremely new, extremely powerful, and so just being, just trying to keep up with it is like the first thing. Because I think a lot of people kind of like dismiss it or
they're afraid of it,
etc. Which is totally understandable, of course. Yeah, I think like it's fundamentally an empowering tool at the moment. And these jobs are bundles of tasks, and some of these tasks can go a lot faster. And so people should think of it as primarily a tool that it is right now. And I think the long-term future of that is uncertain. Yeah, it's kind of really hard to forecast, to be honest. And like I'm not professionally like doing that really, and I think the job is like economists to do properly.
You are an engineer, though, and like one thing I thought was interesting is that like the demand for engineering jobs is continuing to increase.
Yeah.
I can't tell if that's like a temporary phenomenon. I'm not sure how I feel about it yet. Do you know?
Yeah, that's like the demand elasticity almost. Like software was scarce, right? And so the reason we don't have more demand for software is just its scarcity is too expensive.
Too expensive, yeah.
So if the barrier comes down, then actually you have the Jevons paradox, which is like the demand for software actually goes up. It's cheaper and there's more
powerful. Yeah.
The classical example of this always is the ATMs and the bank tellers, because there was a lot of like fear that ATMs and computers basically would displace tellers. but what happened is they made like the cost of operation of a bank branch much cheaper, as there were more bank branches, so there were more tellers. Is like the canonical example people say. But basically, it's just Jevons paradox. Like something becomes cheaper, so there's a lot of unlocked demand for it. So I do think that that's probably. I do have like a cautiously optimistic view of this in software engineering, where I do think it does seem to me like the demand for software will be extremely large, and it's just become a lot cheaper. And so I do think that for quite some time, it's very hard to forecast, but it does seem to me like right now, at least locally, there's going to be more demand for software. Because software is amazing. It's like, digital information processing. You're not forced to use like arbitrary tools that are given to you that are imperfect in various ways. You're not forced to subscribe to what exists. Code is now ephemeral and it can change and it can be modified. And so I think there's going to be a lot of activity in the digital space to like rewire everything in a certain sense. And I think it's going to create a lot of demand for this kind of stuff. I think long term, yeah, obviously, even with auto research, like OpenAI or Anthropic or these other labs, like they're employing what, like 1,000 something researchers, right? Mm-hmm. These researchers are basically like glorified auto, like, they're like automating themselves away like actively, and this is like the thing they're all trying to do.
Yeah.
I think like I went around.
Some of those researchers also feel the psychosis, right? Because it's working, right? And so they're like, oh, it's over for me too.
I did spend a bunch of time going around OpenAI, and I was like, you guys realize if we're successful, like we're all out of jobs, like we're just building automation for Sam or something like that, like or the board, I'm not sure, but like they're just building this automation for the board or the CEO or something like that, and we're all out of our job and maybe contributing on the sides, and so. Yeah, it's kind of like nerving from that perspective.
Is it okay if I ask you Gnome's question? You could be doing that, right? Auto researching with a lot of compute scale and a bunch of colleagues at one of the frontier labs. Like, why not?
Well, I was there for a while, right? Like, and I did re-enter. So to some extent, I agree. And I think that there are many ways to slice this question. It's a very loaded question a little bit. I will say that I feel very good about like what people can contribute and their impact outside of the frontier labs, obviously. Not in the industry, but also in like more like ecosystem level roles. So your role, for example, is more like ecosystem level. My role currently is also kind of more on ecosystem level. And I feel very good about like impact that people can have in those kinds of roles. I think conversely, there are definitely problems in my mind for basically aligning yourself way too much with the frontier labs too. So fundamentally, I mean, you have a huge financial incentive to with these frontier labs, and by your own admission, the AIs are going to like really change humanity and society in very dramatic ways. And here you are basically like building the technology and benefiting from it, like and being like very allied to it through financial means. Like this was a conundrum that was in at the heart of how OpenAI was started in the beginning. Like this was the conundrum that we were trying to solve. And so that so it's kind of
it's still not resolved.
The conundrum is still not like fully resolved. So that's number one. You're not a completely free agent, and you can't actually like be part of that conversation in a fully autonomous, free way. Like if you're inside one of the frontier labs, like there's certain things that you can't say, and conversely, there are certain things that the organization wants you to say, and they're not going to twist your arm, but you feel the pressure of like what you should be saying, because like obviously, otherwise it's like really awkward conversations, strange side eyes, like what are you doing, So you can't like really be an independent agent, and I feel like a bit more aligned with humanity in a certain sense outside of the frontier lab because. I'm not subject to those pressures almost, right? And I can't say whatever I want to. Yeah, I would say in the frontier labs, like, you can have like impact there, of course, as well. So, but there's many researchers, and maybe you're one of them, maybe your ideas are really good, etc. And maybe there's a lot of decision making to do, and you want to be in a position where you are in the room with those conversations when they come up. I do think that currently the stakes are like overall fairly low, and so everything is kind of like nice. But ultimately, at the end of the day, like when the stakes are really high, etc. If you're an employee at an organization, I don't actually know how much sway you're going to have on the organization, what's going to do. Like fundamentally, at the end of the day, it's you're not like really in charge. Like you're in a room and you're contributing ideas, but you're not really in charge of that entity that you're part of. So those are like some sources of misalignment, I think, to some extent. I will say that like in one way, I do agree a lot with that sentiment. That I do feel like like the labs, for better or worse, they're opaque, and a lot of work is there, and they're kind of like at the edge of capability and what's possible, and they're working on what's coming down the line. And I think if you're outside of that frontier lab, your judgment fundamentally will start to drift because you're not part of the, what's coming down the line.
Right.
And so I feel like my judgment will inevitably start to drift as well. And I won't actually have an understanding of how these systems actually work under the hood. It's an opaque system. I won't have a good understanding of how it's going to develop, and etc. And so I do think that in that sense, I agree, and something I'm nervous about. I think it's worth basically being in touch with what's actually happening and actually being in the frontier lab. And if some of the frontier labs would have me come for some amount of time and do really good work for them, and then maybe kind of
guys looking for a job. This is super exciting.
Then I think that's maybe a good setup because I kind of feel like it's kind of maybe that's like one way to actually be connected to what's actually happening, but also not feel like you're necessarily fully controlled by those entities. So I think, honestly, in my mind, like Noam can probably do extremely good work at OAI, but also I think his most impactful work could very well be outside of OpenAI.
No, that's a call to be an independent researcher with auto research.
Yeah, there's many things to do on the outside, and and I think ultimately the ideal solution maybe is like going back and forth and I think fundamentally you can have really amazing impact in places. So very complicated. I don't know, like it's a very loaded question a little bit, but I joined the Frontier Lab and I'm outside, and then maybe in the future I'll want to join again. And I think That's kind of like how I look at it.
One question related to what visibility does the world or the AI ecosystem have into the frontier is like how close open source is to the frontier, and how sustainable that is. I think it is quite surprising. The entire sequence of events, actually, from like having a handful of Chinese models and global models, and I think people are going to continue releasing here in the near term that are closer than much of the industry anticipated from a capability perspective. I don't know if you're surprised by that, but you're a long-term contributor to open source. Like, what's your prediction here?
Yeah, so roughly speaking, basically the closed models are ahead, but like people are monitoring the number of months that sort of like open source models are behind.
And started with there's nothing, and then it went to 18 months.
Yeah,
and
but
now it's like,
convergence, right? So maybe they're behind by like, what is the latest? Maybe like 8 months kind of thing right now. Yeah, I'm a huge fan of open source, obviously. So for example, in operating systems, you have like closed source, like Windows and Mac OS. These are large software projects, kind of like what LLMs are going to become. And there's Linux, but Linux is very easy. Like actually, Linux is an extremely successful project. It runs on the vast majority of computers. Like last time I checked, was it like 60% or something? Like around Linux. And that's because there is a need in the industry to have a common open platform that everyone feels sort of safe using. I would say like the industry has always felt a demand for that kind of a project to exist. And I think the same is true now. And that's why businesses actually there's demand for this kind of a thing to exist. The big difference is that everything is capital. There's a lot of capex that goes into this. So I think that's where things like Allpart a little bit make it a bit harder to compete in some sense. I do think that the current models are very good. The other thing that I think is like really interesting is that for the vast majority of like consumer use cases and things like that, even the current open source models are actually quite good, I would say. And I think like if you go forward like more years, it does seem to me like a huge amount of like simple use cases are going to be well covered and actually even run locally. But there's going to be always like some demand for like frontier intelligence, and that can actually be extremely large piece of the pie. But it could be that the need for frontier intelligence is going to be like Nobel Prize kind of work, or like let's move Linux from C to Rust. There's going to be like bigger projects, like scoped in that kind of way, and there's going to be maybe more, and maybe that's where a lot of the frontier closed intelligences are going to be interacting with. And open source is kind of like going to eat through a lot of the more basic use cases or something like that. At some point, what is frontier today is going to be, probably later this year, what's frontier today in terms of what I'm using right now from closed labs might be open source, and that's going to be doing a lot of work. So I kind of expect that this dynamic will actually basically continue. Like we'll have frontier labs that have closed AIs that are kind of like these oracles, and then we'll have open source kind of like behind the some amount of months. And I kind of expect that to continue. And I actually think that's like a pretty good setup overall. Because I'm a little bit hesitant of having, I don't actually think it's like structurally, I think there's some systemic risk attached to just having intelligences that are closed, and that's it. And I think that's centralization has a very poor track record in my view in the past, and has...
you mean like in political or economic systems in general?
Yes. Exactly. I think there's like a lot of pretty bad precedent. A lot of pretty bad precedent. So I want there to be a thing that is maybe not at the edge of capability because it's new and unexplored, etc. But I want there to be a thing that's behind, and that is kind of like a common working space for intelligences that the entire industry has access to. Yeah, that seems to me like a pretty decent power balance for the industry.
Yeah, I was thinking there's just like there are many problems to solve, right? Like if you keep advancing intelligence from the frontier, we can do new things, and there are a lot of like very big problems for humanity, right? And so like it seems that will continue to be a very expensive game, and so I want to like root for labs that are doing that because there are problems we cannot solve without continuing to advance the models in a very expensive way. And yet, as you point out, like if what we have today as frontier is open, that's a lot of capability, right? And so I think the power of that or the democratization of that seems like very useful and also healthy.
Yeah, I think basically by accident we're actually like in an okay spot. By accident we happen to be in a good spot in a certain sense.
Well, and to some degree, the longer this endures, like this dynamic, the healthier of a spot like the ecosystem might be in, right? Because you have more and more area under the curve.
And I will say that even on the closed side, I almost feel like it's been like even further centralizing recently because I think a lot of the front runners are like not necessarily like the top tier, and so like in that sense, I think it's not super ideal. I would love there to be more frontier labs because I'm like by default very suspicious of like I want there to be more people in the room. I think like in machine learning, ensembles always outperform any individual model, and so I want there to be ensembles of people thinking about all the hardest problems, and I want there to be ensembles of people in the room when they to be all well informed and to make all those decisions. So I don't want it to be like a closed doors with 2 people or 3 people. I feel like that's like not a good feature. I almost wish like there were more labs. Is long story short, and I do think that open source has a place to play. I hope it sticks around, and it's currently slightly behind, and that's actually kind of like a good thing.
Okay, you worked on the precursor to generalized robotics, autonomy in cars, right? A lot has happened in the last couple months with robotics companies as well, like acceleration of really impressive generalization of environment, of tasks, like increasing long horizon tasks, lots of money going into the space. Like, is it going to happen? Has anything in your view changed recently?
So like my view is kind of informed by what I saw in self-driving, and I do feel like self-driving is the first robotics application. So probably what I saw is at the time, like 10 years ago, there were a large number of startups, and I kind of feel like most of them basically like didn't long-term make it. And what I saw is that like a lot of capital expenditure had to go in and a lot of time. And so I think robotics, because it's so difficult and so messy and requires a huge amount of capital investment and a lot of like conviction, just it's like a big problem. And I think atoms are really hard. So I kind of feel like it will lag behind what's going to happen in digital space. And in digital space, there's going to be a huge amount of unhobbling, basically like things that weren't super efficient becoming a lot more efficient by like a factor of 100 because bits are so much easier. And so I think currently in terms of what's going to change and like where the activity is, I kind of feel like digital space is going to like change a huge amount. And then the physical space will lag behind. And what I find very interesting is like this interface in between them as well. Because I think in this like, if we do have more agents acting on behalf of humans and more agents kind of like talking to each other and doing tasks and participating in kind of the economy of agents, etc., you're going to run out of things that you're going to do purely in the digital space. At some point, you have to go to the universe and you have to ask the questions. You have to run an experiment and see what the universe tells you to get back to learn something. And so we currently have a huge amount of like digital work because there's an overhang in how much we collectively thought about what already is digital. So we just didn't have enough thinking cycles among the humans to think about all the information that's already digital and already uploaded. And so we're going to start running out of stuff that is actually like already uploaded. So you're going to at some point read all the papers and process them and have some ideas about what to try. But yeah, we're just going to. I don't actually know how much you can like get intelligence that's like fully closed off and with just information that's built into it, you know. And so I think what's going to happen is first there's going to be a huge amount of unhobbling, and I think there's a huge amount of work there. Then actually it's going to move to like interfaces between physical and digital. So and that's like sensors of like seeing the world and actuators of like doing something to the world. So I think a lot of interesting companies will actually come from that interface of like, can we feed the super intelligence in a certain sense data, and can we actually like take data out and manipulate the physical world per its bidding, if you want to like anthropomorphize the whole thing, right? And then the physical world, actually, I almost feel like the total addressable market, etc., in terms of like the amount of work and so on, is massive, possibly even much larger, maybe what can happen in the digital space. So I actually think it's like a much bigger opportunity as well. But I do feel like it's a huge amount of work, and in my mind, the atoms are just like a million times harder. So so it will lag behind, but it's also, I think, a little bit of a bigger market. So it's kind of like yeah, I think the opportunities kind of like follow that kind of trajectory. So right now, digital is like my main interest, but then interfaces would be like after that, and then maybe like some of the physical things, like their time will come and they'll be huge, you know, when they do come.
Well, it's an interesting framework for it too, because certain things, not the things I'm working on right now, but certain things are much easier even in the world of atoms, right? Like if you just think about like read and write to the physical world, like read, like sensors, cameras, like there's a lot of existing hardware, and you can imagine like enriching agent capabilities or capturing a lot of new data if you're just clever about it, and like you don't necessarily have to invest a lot to like get something valuable.
Yeah, so like examples of this that I saw, for example, are, you know, a friend of mine, Liam, is the CEO of Periodic. I visited them last week, so it's just on top of mind. Like they're trying to do auto research for material science. And so in that case, it's like the sensors to the intelligence are actually like pretty expensive lab equipment. And the same is true in biology. I think a lot of people are very interested in engineering biology, and you know the sensors will be more than just like video cameras, if that makes sense. And then the other thing I saw, for example, is companies that are trying to have, like you basically pay people for training data. As an example, to feed, programmatically. To feed the Borg. And so, like, these are all examples of like sensors in a certain sense. So they take many diverse shapes and forms, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so I'm looking forward to the point where I can ask for a task in the physical world, and I can put a price on it, and just tell the agent, like, you know, you figure out how to do it. Go get the data.
I'm actually kind of surprised we don't have enough, like, information markets. Like, if, for example, the polling market or other betting markets, or even stocks, etc., if they have so much autonomous activity and rising amount of activity, like, why should, like, for example, if Iran was just happening now, like, how come there isn't a process where, like, taking a photo or video from somewhere in Iran should cost, like, $10? Like, someone should be able to pay for that, you know? Like, and that's an example of, like, feeding the intelligence. There's not going to be a human looking at it. It's going to be, like, agents who are trying to guess the betting games and stock markets and so on. So I kind of feel like the agentic web is still, like, fairly new, that there's no, like, mechanisms for this, but this is an example of what I think might happen. There's a good book that maybe is inspiring called Daemon. You potentially read it. In Daemon, the intelligence ends up like puppeteering almost a little bit like humanity in a certain sense, you know? And so humans are kind of like its actuators, but humans are also like its sensors. And so I think like collectively, like society will kind of like reshape in a certain way in to serve that kind of that will kind of like end up happening collectively across the industry, where there's just a lot more automation and has certain needs, and kind of humans will be serving those needs of that machine, not necessarily like to each other.
Well, we were on this very specific point of like missing pieces of training data. We needed something like auto research, right? Like we need the training cycle or the SFT piece to be far more mechanized.
For which part?
In order to make the collection, like in order to take the human out of the loop, to ask for a task that is just like improve my model quality with new data, right?
Yes.
Does that make sense to you? Like we, if you can't have the model do the training runs by itself, then your ability to do this as a like closed loop task with by pricing data is more challenged.
Yes, 100%. Yeah.
But
the
no,
thing is, the thing is for LLM training, it actually is like very easily, it like really fits the paradigm. So you'd actually
yeah,
expect,
clean metric.
yeah, like LLM training actually fits the paradigm really well, really easily. Like all the optimization of all the code, and so it runs faster. And then you also have like metrics that you can optimize against. I do think that if you have an autonomous loop over those metrics, there's going to be a lot of like good hardening going on, where the system will like overfit to those metrics. And so, but then you can use the system to devise more metrics, and you just have really good coverage. So it's kind of hard to tell, but in a certain sense, it's like a pretty good fit.
I want to talk about a little tiny side project you have before we end. Tell me about the MicroGPT arc.
Oh yeah. Okay, so MicroGPT. So I have this like running obsession of like maybe a decade or two of just like simplifying and boiling down the basically LLMs to like their bare essence. And I've had a number of projects along these lines, so like NanoGPT and Make More and Micrograd, etc. So I feel like MicroGPT is now the state of the art of me trying to like just boil it down to just the essence. Because the thing is, like, training neural nets and LLMs specifically is a huge amount of code, but all of that code is actually complexity from efficiency. It's just because you need it to go fast. If you don't need it to go fast and you just hear about the algorithm, then that algorithm actually is 200 lines of Python. Very simple to read. And this includes comments and everything. Because you just have, like, your data set, which is text, and you need your neural network architecture, which is like 50 lines. You need to do your forward pass, and then you have to do your backward pass to calculate the gradients. And so a little autograd engine to calculate the gradients is like 100 lines. And then you can optimizer, and Atom, for example, which is a very state-of-the-art optimizer, is like, again, 10 lines, really. And so putting everything together in a training loop is like, 200 lines. And what was interesting to me, like, normally before, like, maybe a year ago or more, if I had come up with MicroGPT, I would be tempted to basically explain to people. Like, I have a video, like, stepping through it or something like that. And I actually tried to make that video a little bit, and I tried to make like a little guide to it and so on. I kind of realized that this is not really adding too much because it's already so simple that it's 200 lines that anyone could ask their agent to explain it in various ways. And the agents, like, I'm not explaining it to people anymore. I'm explaining it to agents. If you can explain it to agents, then agents can be the router, and they can actually target it to the human in their language with infinite, patience and just at their capability and so on.
Right. If I don't understand this particular function, I can ask the agent to explain it to me like 3 different ways.
Yeah,
and I'm not going to get that from you.
Exactly. And so I kind of feel like, what is education? Like, it used to be guides, it used to be lectures, it used to be this thing, but that. I feel like now more I'm explaining things to agents, and maybe I'm coming up with skills where, like, so basically skill is just a way to instruct the agent how to teach the thing. So maybe I could have a skill for MicroGPT of the progression I imagine the agent should take you through if you're interested in understanding the code base. And it's just like hints to the model to like, first start off with this and then with that. And so I could just script the curriculum a little bit as a skill. So I don't feel like, I feel like there's gonna be less of like explaining things directly to people, and it's gonna be more of just like, does the agent get it? And if the agent gets it, they'll do the explanation. And we're not fully there yet because I still think I can probably explain things a little bit better than the agents, but I still feel like the models are improving so rapidly that I feel like it's a losing battle to some extent. And so I think education is going to be kind of like reshuffled by this quite substantially, where it's the end of like teaching each other things a little bit. Like if I have a library, for example, of code or something like that, it used to be that you have documentation for other people who are going to use your library, but like you shouldn't do that anymore. Like you should have, instead of HTML documents for humans, you have markdown documents for agents, because if agents get it, then they can just explain all the different parts of it. So it's this redirection through agents, and that's why. So I think we're going to see a lot more of that playing out.
Well, we'll see if the great teachers know, like, to develop intuition for how to explain things to agents
and
differently.
ultimately, so for example, MicroGPT, like I tried to get an agent to write MicroGPT. So I told it, like, try to boil down the simplest things, like try to boil down neural network training to the simplest thing, and it can't do it. Like MicroGPT is like it's like my end of my obsession. It's the 200 lines. I thought about this for a long time. I've obsessed about this for a long time. This is the solution. Trust me, it can't get simpler. And this is my value add. Everything else gets it. It just can't come up with it, but it totally gets it and understands why it's done in a certain way, etc. So like my contribution is kind of like
你就坐在那边。
everything else in terms of like education that goes on after that is like not my domain anymore. So maybe it's like education kind of changes in those ways, and you kind of have to infuse a few bits that you feel strongly about the curriculum or the better way of explaining it or something like that. Things that agents can't do is your job now. Things that agents can do, they can probably do better than you or like very soon. And so you should be strategic about what direction to take them.
Well, we appreciate the feedback. Thank you, Andre.
不吃，不吃，
Find us on Twitter at No
不
Priors.
吃。
Subscribe to our YouTube channel if you want to see our faces. Follow the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen. That way you get a new episode every week. And sign up for emails or find transcripts for every episode at no-priors.com.
People want to follow their passion, but don't even know what it actually means. So the root of the word passio is Latin for suffering. So it's not about doing one thing, if at all, and then assuming that that thing never changes, which it will. And so this kind of like passion window is very short-lived, or it's only possible as an employee where you actually stick to doing the same thing every single day within kind of a larger machine, or a solopreneur that chooses not to scale. Not a business owner unless you choose to love business ownership as the thing you're quote passionate about, which means that you're willing to suffer for it, right? And the ultimate version of this comes at the very end. If you keep doing the thing that you are, that you suffer for a long period of time, eventually you can get to true ownership, where something is on its own, and then you have all your time back, right? And so let me give you an example. So I run every month. I meet with 10 entrepreneurs. It's the most expensive quote service that we sell. It's obviously unscalable, but I meet with bigger businesses. Usually the average business size is around 10 million, and we meet in a group of 10, and I meet with them. And it's something that I absolutely love doing. I look forward to the days whenever they're coming up, but I would absolutely hate it if I had to do it every day. And so how can that be true, right? How can I love something, but if I did a lot of it, I would hate it? Well, it's like, well, there's a certain pizza place that I love going to once or twice a year, and it's amazing. If I was forced to eat it every single meal, I wouldn't like it as much. And so we have this misconception about following your passion. And in both scenarios, if you do the same thing all the time that you quote love, you'll stop loving it because you'll get so much of it. The fact that it's rare is what makes you love it. And if it stays rare, then it means that the vast majority of your time not really doing it. And so it's just a complete myth. And I understand why people tell younger people or other newer entrepreneurs like, oh, follow your passion. It's just because it's politically correct and it's easy to say, but it's not the truth, right? And so you're not going to have the perfect amount of sunshine for the perfect amount of time, right? And so let me reframe how I think through this, is that you want moments. You want good days, not a never-ending work state of this jolly thing that you love, because eventually you'd adapt and you would get bored, just like everything else. And so here's the underline. You're using the excuse of a lack of passion to disguise your inability to handle difficulty, to handle being able to repeatedly do things that you don't enjoy, to have something that you do find meaningful have happen. Real quick, I'm going to show you the exact 10-stage roadmap from 0 to 100 million plus that less than 1% of companies finish. I've now done multiple times, and so I can say with a lot of confidence that these are the stages as headcount increases that you need to get through. And I broke each of these down by each of the functions of the business, what the constraint feels like what are the symptoms of it when you're going through it, and then what steps we actually took to graduate. And we've done this across software, physical products, service businesses, brick and mortar, all of this, and it works. And it's my gift to you. It's absolutely free. And so the link's in the description, but you just go acquisition.com/roadmap, just enter your info, and it'll spit it right back to you, all free. And so this is what actually happens in the real world. Right? Unless you get very good passion, you will have to do things that you like less. That's real, right? And then number two, as soon as you harvest your passion, your demand will outstrip your supply of time, and 95% of what you do will not be the thing you love, but stuff that you do to support the thing you love, which you may indeed not love. And so the 5% of your passion that's left over will only be there if your passion doesn't change, which it also will, which means the vast majority of your life you will not be doing things that you are passionate about. And in the tiny instance you do, it's likely short-lived. And so let me frame why I think this is so important. If you were playing a video game, and day one I said, enter this cheat code, you have max life, max strength, max money, max good looks. And then you go through the whole game, and it's incredibly easy. What would you do? You just never play the game. It wouldn't even be fun, right? And so we on some level know that we have to suffer. It's not about winning the lottery, right? It's not about the outcome. We can't say, oh, I'm really ambitious, I won the lottery. That's the ambition and the passion go hand in hand, in that you are stating to the world, and more importantly to yourself, that you are willing to suffer for this thing because you have deemed it important enough